Mic check.
That's okay.
Mic check. Mic check.
I can raise this.
Mic check. There we go. Wow. Hello, we are still checking the mics. Hello, hello. How is WreckCon doing today? So, we are currently all gathered here because you are interested in indie gaming, whether it be from a playing perspective, but from up here, from a making perspective. If you're interested in making indie games, we got some people here in order to talk about it. So, how about we go down the line, starting with Kartik, of who you are, what you work on, some games you've worked on, and I want to specifically know your favorite video game urban legend.
All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Kartik. I graduated from Georgia Tech a while ago. Sorry. And since then, I've been working on my own indie game studio, Finite Reflection Studios. We've released 3 games on Steam, Xbox, and PlayStation, and are currently working on our 4th title, Void Souls. And I'm also a community organizer. A community organizer for ATL Game Devs. It's a local community of Atlanta game developers. If you're interested in being a game developer and want to network and socialize with them, I guess after this I could find a way to get you in the group. And in my career, I've worked at Cartoon Network Games. I've worked in hyper-casual mobile game industry. I've worked on like the puzzle web industry. I've been a producer. I've been a Unity developer. And again, currently, my full-time job is indie game developer, self-employed, working on my own game. Oh, sorry, you aren't urban legend.
Yeah, video game urban legend.
A lot of things to cover. Sheesh. I'm sorry. I play games really vanilla and I have nothing interesting to say, but I'm so sorry.
Hello, I'm Yoon. I'm still young and spry compared to Kartik. Sorry, Kartik. I graduated in 2022, winter, so it's been about a year since I've left these wretched halls. I have worked on various VGDev games, Willow, Lunacia. Well, I don't know if any of you guys know what those are. But in my career, I've worked at PlayStation as a producer, production coordinator to be specific, working on an unreleased AAA game that I can't tell anybody about. They'll put me in the back of a van. Outside of that, currently I'm working on 2 indie games. One is Sacred Haven, some game. Another is a action JRPG that we can't bother to name yet. We'll figure it out eventually. But video game urban legend, I think. When I was a kid, when I first picked up Mario Galaxy, I was convinced that you could play as Luigi for like the entire game. Because of like those like Luigi stars that you could pick up, like once you beat the game. So I spent like hundreds of hours trying to figure out like how to actually like unlock this character when it didn't actually exist. But yeah, also yes, join ATL Game Devs, it's awesome.
We will definitely talk more about that during the panel.
Hello, I'm Mitch. What do I do? Well, I guess, what don't I do? Yeah, I graduated tech, I was in VGDev, I graduated in 2018. And right now I'm doing mobile development as a technical artist. I've worked on games like NBA All World and probably some games that are just like random things you see on the App Store, like Ultimate Golf or 8-ball pool, that kind of thing. And besides that, in my free time, I work with some friends on a 2D Metroidvania shooter, platformer, you know, that kind of thing. Also unnamed. We just call it Project Gelham. That might change, who knows. And I guess for video game urban legend, I like classic like Mew when you're like 5 years old, like you and your friends are talking about like, oh, you just go behind the truck. He's behind the truck. You gotta get behind the truck somehow, and then you can get Mew in a red and blue or whatever. But yeah.
And finally,
Hi everybody, I'm Chase. I am the current president of VGDev. I've not graduated yet, although I don't have much longer here. I'll be out in spring. Games I've worked on, 11-ish VGDev games. Most notably, I'm one of our lead programmers on Slider, and I'm the project/programming/design/etc. lead of Barcade. Shameless plug for my 2 games in the corner back over there where the giant cherry blossom tree is. Hi, Bumo and Erica, if you're listening. In terms of gaming urban legends, I'm gonna have to go with the Mario Party, like the anti-piracy screens. Yeah, back when I was like, oh my god, they're so cool.
okay. So, as we're all here because you guys all like making indie games, I like making games. When and how did gaming go from just something of like, oh, this is fun to simply play, to this is something I want to make?
For me, I feel like it was the first time I put my hands on a controller when I was like, I don't know, 7, 8 years old, I guess. My parents were like very strict with gaming consoles growing up, and so the first one I got was a GameCube, but I usually played like N64 and NES at my friends' houses, and the first time I got my own GameCube and I was like playing games at home, I was like, one day I'm gonna make these. That is a dream of mine, and specifically it was a dream of mine to get one of my games onto, at the time, a GameCube. Now I have my games on Nintendo Switch, so accomplished that goal. Yeah, and then the first time that my parents got me my own computer, I just like looked up online. Actually, no, I think at that time I wasn't allowed to use the internet. So my parents got me a Java for Dummies book, and then I used that to figure out how to code just text adventures, just basic text input-output of like, go Zork style. I'm like really aging myself here, but Zork text adventure, just typing in, go north, travel this way, open the chest, get a sword. Been doing that since, through the Flash era of game development, through the current Unity generation of game development, and yeah.
For me personally, I actually got into game dev, I'd say, relatively late. So I started programming like in middle school, and I did game dev in high school through, I don't know if any of you guys know what TSA is. If you know, it's good. It's just like a science Olympiad kind of thing. So I was on our high school team, but for the first 3 years, there was kind of a really established group of guys who were kind of leading the whole thing. So I started as just doing like background art, and then some UI UX stuff, and I just kind of refused to go away. And then like my junior year, I did like motion capture for a triathlon-themed rhythm game, in addition to some UI stuff and some bug fixes. And then my senior year, they were a year above me, so they all graduated. So I just had to figure out the entire thing all on my own, and then came to tech and got really into VGDev.
Yeah, I think I've just always wanted to be an artist, and into that end, I was like 13 and I had like a big story in my head that I wanted to get out, and yeah, like a intro programming book, and also like I took like a art summer camp, and the guy mentioned Blender, and it was just like, that's cool. Oh, Blender has a game engine in it, and then so I started screwing around with that. Hyper fixated on that for like 2 weeks, made a rollerball game, and then didn't touch it for 6 years until I started doing stuff in VGDev. Yeah, and then I went from there.
Chase kind of stole my intro. I also did TSA. Shout out to TSA homies out here. But for me, I think I definitely, so you know how in like 8th grade, they ask, like people start asking like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And you kind of have to like come up with some random answer. I think it was about that point, I was like going home on the bus thinking about it, and I was like, you know, I kind of like games. I do quite like playing games, because my parents, it was kind of a struggle for me to play them at all at home. So I think that kind of made me want to push back even harder and play even more.
Rebel you.
The Lord. But Yeah, I think once I hit high school, I mean, I did TSA, messed around in Unity and RPG Maker MV, rough times. But yeah, ended up starting to get more and more involved once I got to college, got entrenched in the community here, saw how many wonderful, talented people there are. That kind of like just cemented it in for me. And so here we are now. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, mine was a motorcycle driver of what I wanted to be when I was in like preschool. No.
Motocross madness.
Okay.
X versus ATV.
Oh god, safety. So, as you guys have all been working as game devs, to this moment, what would you say is your current proudest moment as a game developer? Could be something simply like a feature that you did or an accomplishment.
I'll say my proudest accomplishment is the fact that I haven't given up yet. It's been I started our studio in 2016, so it's been like 8 years now that I've been trying to do it, and it's taken about 8 years for me to be able to pay myself a full-time wage for my own company. Is how long, that's like 8 years of, I don't want to say 8 years of failure, but like 8 years of failure of that particular goal of wanting to pay myself. 8 years of like, hey everybody, here's this game, and like crickets. Hey everybody, here's this game, and crickets. And then finally put out something that people want to play, that we have an opportunity to hopefully make some real money with. I think a very sort of like specific accomplishment was that our last game was nominated for a GLAD award. That was a big sort of personal win for me. It was the first time I put a lot of heart into writing a story for the thing, and I wanted to make a game that was just sort of like a really upbeat, happy, queer love story game, and to see it recognized at the same level as like Life is Strange and The Last of Us 2 in the same award category as them was like insane. We obviously did not win. I didn't care. I was just like, I saw the tweet go out and it was just like, yeah, here are all these like big games, and there's my game in the middle of all of those. And that was pretty. Thank you. That game was called The Gardener of the Wild Vines.
Yeah, that's momentous. And some homework after this is Kartik has an awesome talk that is uploaded on the VGDev channel about how to fail at game dev. A really, really good talk from him if you want to listen to him speak for another hour. Incredibly interesting as well. Anyway, pass it forward.
I think for me, I mean, there's a lot of proud moments, obviously, considering given the fact that we work in like a passion-driven space. But I think, for me specifically, I think it was when I first came out to an event, like a showcase. I think it was SiegeCon 2019, 18, something like that. It was 2018. With a game that I worked on with a couple of people I'd met at Georgia State, because I transferred into Georgia Tech from State. So at the time, it was kind of surreal to like see all these I I remember like across from us was like Insomniac Games and Blue Mammoth, and like our eyes were just like the whole time just bugging out, staring across at them like, oh my god, we're here. And it was like this really like bad Metroidvania that we like cooked up in like a month. But even so, it was still like I still think about that moment like, I think it was at that point where I thought like, I can do this. This is actually feasible. I think for a lot of people that's like something that game dev that's like one of their biggest goals.
My turn. Yeah. For me, it was, I think, thinking about it more while you guys were talking, just like, in my like junior year, I think, a technical director, like supervisor or something from Disney came to Tech to give a talk on Zootopia and like the technology and stuff that they went into doing that. And he was talking about like how he like, oh, I do a little bit of engineering and I do a lot of talking to artists and stuff. And he's like, and I was like, wow, that's cool. I like art and I have a CS degree, so that's cool. And I was like, is there something like that for games? And then I found out about technical art, and that was kind of what I started striving to be. But like straight out of college, like it wasn't easy to get a technical artist role, so I wound up taking a like gameplay engineering role. And then for like 2 years of that, I finally like was able to get a technical artist role at the job I'm at right now. And so when I finally got that, I was like, oh, yeah, I did it. So that was a lot of relief, accomplishment, all rolled into one. Yeah.
You know, I could take up the entire rest of this panel talking about all the cool stuff I've done. Okay, well, if I have to boil it down, a couple of lists. Number one, last spring, Slider won Best Student Game at IGF, which is like pretty much the highest possible honor that any student-made game can win.
Over there.
Hi, Bumo.
Hello, Bumo.
So that was amazing. We weren't even expecting to be a finalist, and then we got to go have a booth in San Francisco at IGF with games like Neon White and Tunic, who, by the way, didn't win an award, and we did. So infer from that what you will. But I think in general, I think my favorite part of this is coming to conventions like WreckCon and DreamHack and Southern and just getting to see people actually experience things. I think a lot of times as a game developer, right, you kind of get in this echo chamber, both in your own head and also like, you're like, oh, you sent your friends to play test, but they're your friends, so of course they're gonna like your game and do your play test for you, because that's kind of what we do for each other. But to bring it to a convention and see people play your game, see people play your game for hours, see people abandon their friends and family to stay there and keep playing your game, see people come back the day after to keep playing your game, is really an unparalleled experience.
Nice. Something that you guys have talked about and has been a common run-through of all of us here is that at one point in time or another, we have all been in VGDev. And for those of you who don't know, VGDev is the game development club at Georgia Tech. You should join. You should join. We have someone from nearly the very beginning of 2012 all the way down to the current president. So in terms of how VGDev has helped you, how would you say that the club itself has helped you in terms of making connections and sort of building out some of your skills? Because I feel like it is a good place to start here.
Can I count down from 3 and we could all say the S word together?
Hope.
So? Okay. 3, 2, 1. Scope.
I mean, to elaborate a little bit, well, clearly, as you can tell, it was not rehearsed. I didn't even know what S word he was talking about first. That was kind of what I was going to get at, was like, for me, the biggest thing that I learned from VGDev was how to finish something. I think that in any kind of artistic endeavor that you do, whether it's games, whether it's art, whether it's film, it's really easy to say, I have an idea. It's very easy to say, I've written down the idea. It's very easy to say, I have started on this idea. But it's really, really, really hard to get your idea to a point where you can give it to somebody else without any extra comments and just say, here you go, what do you think? Even if it's something as simple as just a drawing, sometimes it's difficult to just remove yourself from the process of making it and say, all right, this is done, I'm putting it away and giving it to someone else. I think it's especially hard with games because games are such an interactive medium. If you're not really thinking about it from a perspective of someone else who's playing it, who hasn't seen the entire development process, who doesn't know what's in your brain, they're going to have a hard time kind of engaging in what you've created. And that's the one thing I think that VGDev does better than, I've talked at a bunch of other schools. At GDC, I've talked to a lot of students from other specific game industry schools who I don't think have as good of appreciation for how to finish a game as VGDev alumni do. And it really shows, when I've interviewed people for various jobs that I've been at, I can tell when the interviewee is someone who learned how to finish something in school versus an interviewee who just did their classwork and had a couple of cool passion projects but never actually finished any of them. There's a massive difference in both the hireability of that person and the just raw, I don't want to say talent, but just how much I think that person's going to be able to just insert themselves into a team and see this thing through to completion. So finishing things, VGDev, very good.
I think for me specifically, I don't want to like copy Kartik's point. Scope is absolutely important, and learning how to finish something is super underrated, as those of you who are working on games in VGDev right now are coming to learn. But the big thing for me, I think, the thing that helped me the most was just the community itself. Because a lot of the times, when you're working on something creative, I mean, if any of you have ever worked on something creative before, you spend a lot of time just like in your own head, thinking alone. You're probably hunched over a desk at like 4 a.m. in the morning, you've got like coffee and Monster on your table, just chugging that stuff down. But like, what VGDev brings in conjunction with that is the chance for you to talk to other people who are just as deranged as you potentially, who are working on similar things, have similar interests, and you kind of get to feed off of each other, learn things from other people's journeys that you might have never gotten a chance to really been introduced to. And I think that's really understated considering how small of an industry game development is as a whole. Like, I've been to dozens of cons and I meet the same people like over and over again. It's like one big happy unhappy family. And it's kind of uncanny how if you look at the people around you, these are the people you might be running into time and time again later down the line, because you're all going to be stepping in together. So I would say community is the big thing for me, at least.
Yes. You started talking about like learning off of other people, and that's really, I mean, like on top of scope, but like it's like seeing other people do really cool things is super inspiring. Like being in those like weekly meetings, just like it's like just seeing all the cool. Like I was like a fan of all my peers and friends in those classes. Like I couldn't wait to see like the newest updates for everyone else's games, and like being able to like push yourself, hopefully not too hard, and to like fit as many cool things and polish it as best you can and complete the game, and then like build on that from semester to semester. It's like, okay, yeah, like my first game was like that, and then but my next game is gonna be this, and then it's just kind of like you build those skills, you get inspired more, and you just keep going from there, and like sky's the limit. Yeah.
Great, so now there's 3 things I can't talk about. But luckily, none of you took the points I did want to mention, which is task management and team leading. I think a lot of people and a lot of VGDev leads, a lot of people think, oh, if you're leading a team, that just means you're the person doing the most work. I mean, yes, but no. Team leading is obviously a lot more about task delegation, and there's, working on a game by yourself or in high school with 5 other people is much different than trying to lead a team of 30. And so VGDev has really taught me, because I think I have a problem a lot of times where I keep a lot of ideas in my head and I go, oh, it's going to be more work for me to explain to someone else than to just do it myself. But like that is a skill, being able to take the thoughts, the ideas you have and translate those down, and also figuring out, right? Like, yes, there probably are some things that maybe you need to do, right? I wasn't going to hand off the marking folding algorithm to anyone else. That's my baby. But then, I might have had to make compromises on other things or make sure that I explain. And then also, like, when people get stuck, making sure you can help them, making sure that the meeting format you're using suits the team you're using, right? All these tiny little adjustments and things that you might not think about. Because, running a game is a lot more than just, hosting a Discord call once a week and then just being the best at making the game you want to make and telling everyone no because you hate their ideas. It's a lot of balancing, a lot of delegation. And I think, leading a team has really taught me a lot about how to manage all that.
Side note, just to quickly jump on to what Jason's talking about. There's a reason games have this thing, it's called a producer. In case you haven't heard of it, it is basically a person who just does nothing else but manage the project, make sure it gets from point A to point B. You can kind of think of them as kind of like the boogeyman of the team. They make sure to that things get done. This is an entire job niche in the AAA games industry, and sometimes even in indie, where the teams are a little bit smaller. This is super important.
quick question for you. Have you checked your Jira?
As of this morning, I have not checked my Jira.
Yeah, sorry. But off of you have perfectly led me into what I was going to bring up next, actually, in terms of like team lead, because I think everyone up here has led a game at one point.
Too many.
Yes. And thank you for the VGDev shill up here. I think we've had the VGDev shill hour. But I think with a lot of you guys, if I'm not wrong, making a VGDev game is the first time that you've worked on a larger project that wasn't simply like maybe a solo passion project. So when it came time to actually making your first large game, how was that experience and what did you learn?
Horrifying. To give you some context, my first year at VGDev, I was a transfer student, so I was a sophomore from GSU. And obviously, I think everyone here who has been to tech kind of knows the vibe that tech gives off. Very stern, uncompromising, and lots of high expectations to succeed. So I came in kind of like being hit with all of that, trying to lead a game, and I think definitely the major emotions were sheer terror and feeling overwhelmed. But the biggest thing that I think through that process, I think the biggest thing I walked away with was the fact that no matter what, you're never going to be, unless you're like, I don't know, the guy who made Celeste, or not Celeste, Stardew Valley. Unless you're like a solo dev, then you are never going to be working on a game alone. Simply put, no matter what kind of game it is, 9 times out of 10, you're always going to be relying on somebody, or somebody's going to be relying on you. And as a team lead, being cognizant of that and trying to avoid putting all of that burden on my own shoulders was definitely something that I had to struggle with for not even just my first game, but like every single game I've ever worked on since. There's always a juggle between, I am the captain of this ship, but at the same time, you can't run a ship without a crew, right? And so I think the idea that collaboration is going to be inherently involved from the get-go is something that definitely shook me.
Alright, not to toot my own horn, I think I did a pretty good job. But the reason for that is not because I'm the awesome and greatest game lead in the world, because I'm not. Okay, maybe I am. But the reason is because I talked to people. If I had just come into VGDev and just pitched a game with knowing nothing about the club or how it operates or how it got or anything like that, it would have gone terribly. And I think that's just an important thing in general. It's like right? Like any sort of thing, do your research. So in VGDev specifically, that's working on other games, right? Trying to get like a sub-lead role. So like I was the leader of like programming on Lightsys VR before I led Barcane. Talking to past leads, talking to executive officers. Hey, what are some of the good things that happen? What are some of the bad things that happen? Going around and playing all the other games and seeing what's actually feasible, where people end up, right? When I play VGDev games, are there any that feel really good? Why do they feel so good? Why do they feel so complete? What feels not, what about the games that fall short? Why do they fall short? Were they designed poorly? Were they managed poorly? Did they not have good art or good programming or whatever that is? And so making sure you take the time to do your research and actually get a grip on, what other people have done. And VGDev, that's easy because you have all the previous VGDev games to go back and look at and all the leads right there in the Discord to talk to. In the real world, it'll probably be a bit harder. But something I'm definitely going to do as I keep developing games is making sure that before diving into a project, I do my research and talk to all the relevant people so I can get an idea of what's actually possible instead of, trying to make Dark Souls 2.
My first game I led was a trip on a pirate ship. No. It was a lot of learning because I hadn't made, because I worked on games with people, but I hadn't led a game, and I was also learning Unity at the same time, so it was a lot of teaching other people how to use how to work on my game, and also going I don't know how this works either, so really we're learning this together. And but I don't think I would have completed that game if it weren't for like the mentorship from like the leadership at the time. Which, no, you were there, but I don't know if you were leading, but and so the game was done. It wasn't what I had envisioned, but like it was a finished game. Like there was a menu and credits and a gameplay loop probably, and you could click on things and stuff. And in the end, like, even though like not everyone who had first shown up to like work on the game like stuck with it, like there was still like a core group of people that like were like there to the end, and so that was kind of fun building that camaraderie, I guess. But definitely a lot of lessons I took into the next game I worked on.
Yeah, it's really hard to think back to 2012 when I led my first project. It's a long time to think back, but I feel like what I remember learning from that the most is kind of similar to like what's already been said, but just like, and this is a lesson I'm continually learning and getting better at throughout my career, is just how important the soft skills are in any industry, in any endeavor that you have. Like, it's not about raw skill, it's not about pure talent, it's not about just passion, it's about being able to talk to people that you are working with and really understand where they're coming from. If you want to be a producer, if you want to be a project lead, if you want to be a director or a creative director, like it's really about knowing what are the conditions under which the people you're working with excel. And it's different for everybody. Like I discovered the hard way in college that I can't sit and listen to somebody talk for a long time because I fell asleep in lectures all the time. And I recognize, like, you know, in the team that I lead now, there's some people who I can't put into a meeting and say, hey, we're going to talk about this for the next hour, because I know that they're going to glaze over and stop paying attention after a little bit. I know that they're going to thrive if I instead just put it in a bullet point list and message it to them, and they're going to get it, they're going to go off, they're going to get the work done. But it's about sort of like meeting people where they are. I think in college and like school in general gives us this false impression that there's like one way to learn, one way to succeed, one way to excel. In the real world, everyone works differently and everyone excels differently, and those soft skills of knowing how to work with someone else and make sure that they are as comfortable as they can be to excel, to me was a continued lesson I still learn to this time.
And something that you brought up of how there are multiple paths, like when you're in college, there's a very specific track in order to try to get your degree. If there are the threads for CS, for example. But in terms of your path that you went down for game dev, what would you say was something possibly in like college or shortly after that sort of impacted you towards your path of what you wanted to do?
Well, I think kind of like you, when I was in college, I had no idea what a producer was. I had no idea what that job was. I did know what QA was, and at that time, unfortunately, Cartoon Network Games no longer exists right next door like it used to, but when I was in college, Cartoon Network Games' entire operations was right here, right next door, and they were offering like a lot of students QA roles. So I took that and didn't know anything about the industry, just sort of like took it on a whim. And I think the thing that most shaped my journey in my career was like being in QA and not just sort of like sticking at my desk and doing just my job. I was constantly like, any moment that I got, I was constantly like floating around, trying to talk to other people, trying to see like, trying to make friends, trying to see like, hey, I see you sitting over here doing this thing in the marketing department. What the heck is any of this? I don't know, I'm really curious. And the people that I found myself attracted to the most were the producers, the project managers. And that was when I discovered, I was like, this is a career. I didn't even know this was, I thought I was gonna be like straight out of college. Hello? Oh. I thought I was gonna go straight out of college, straight into like creative directing or I don't know, some bigwig something or the other, really weird expectations. But after I talked to all these producers, I realized, oh, this is actually kind of really fun and really cool and something I might be good at. I sort of started gearing myself towards that in my last year or two of college, and lo and behold, like 2 days after I graduated, I got a text from someone who I used to work with at Cartoon Network, and they were like, hey, we just opened up a spot for you, do you want it? It's like, great, I don't have to apply for jobs, that's awesome. So yeah, highly recommend whatever job you have or whatever job you're able to get, use that as an opportunity to figure out what's out there, because the industry is constantly changing, and there's always new jobs coming up, new jobs going away, and the more that you can just kind of be aware of what's out there, what you like. Yeah, I had no idea I was going to be a producer. That's been the majority of my career.
I think, so to give some context, my path is very different from Kardic's. I came in very long after he was around, so there were a lot more opportunities floating around in the air. So I am extremely fortunate to have had that. But for me, so I actually came into college kind of buying into that idea that there is one straight shot out of it. You go in one way because you did a great, you had a decent score on your SAT, you cared about that one-digit number on your transcript, and that was it. And I figured, okay, when I leave college, it'll be the same thing. Turns out that it's very much not the case. There are 101 different other things that maybe are more important, at least in the context of games, not other industries.
Ignore school.
Yeah, but so for me, I ended up applying to a bunch of I think it was 50 different internships that were just popping up, and I'd have a little window with a job bulletin and just control R every morning, and applying to the first one that I saw that even remotely matched what I could do. And so by the time I graduated college, I had already done an internship at PlayStation, and they wanted to, rehire me, and I was like, okay, cool, we're set. Of course, my initial goal was to be an indie developer. Similar to Kartik, I have these big dreams of yeah, I want to be a big wig creative director. I want to go and direct all this stuff. It's going to be great. Straight out of college, it's going to be fantastic. Then I was stuck working at an entry-level position at PlayStation, which is, again, fantastic, but with all that being said, the big thing that I figured out after college was the timeline is both shorter and longer than you think it is. In that I came into that out of graduation thinking, okay, I'm gonna spend 3-5 years in AAA, I'm gonna do this and that, I'm gonna get to know a lot of people, I'm gonna build up a whole lot of experience, then I'm gonna jump into indie development straight away. I'm gonna do that full time. It's gonna be like a binary switch, I'm gonna flip that. 1 year later, the layoffs hit, and so around December of last year, I got laid off from PlayStation. Don't worry, I'm still alive, as you can clearly see. There is a life after being laid off. But case in point, I was actually I was helping Kartik booth his indie game Void Souls at DreamHack last year, and I remember there was a conversation we had where it went something along the lines of, hey, I'm working on a game, and you were like, oh, okay, have you thought about a publisher yet? And I was like, oh, and that was the last question I was expecting you to ask. But it kind of hit me oh yeah, I could just do that now. I can't just do that now. I'm here. And so currently I'm currently pivoting into a career into SWE as a project manager, using the skills that I had from game dev, while also working on an indie game part-time until I have the means to be able to transition into full-time, which is not something I thought I'd be doing this early in the first place, and it was totally happenstance. So, at least for me, it was very both relieving and terrifying to realize that once you graduate, there's just 100 different ways to actually get to where you want to go. The big thing is to just not forget where you want to end up.
Good, yeah. I just wanted to
Good answer.
Yeah. Good one. Besides the Disney talk I mentioned earlier, just after I graduated, I was applying everywhere and stuff, and I was just I didn't really know what was going on. I didn't have any internships. I interned at Technicolor, which, in case you didn't know, they're still around. They make DVDs.
Wow.
And, but it wasn't I think maybe the more pivotal part was doing my first game jam with some friends that I had graduated, and so I got really close friends, but through that game jam, we got a lot closer, and so we got like and then we like won best in that game jam location, and we're just like, oh, yeah, this is a lot of fun. Let's keep working on this. And so then I was like talking to them every week, working on this game that got canceled, but that's not part of the story. And then after I graduated, I was applying to jobs, and one of my friends on the project was like, hey, we have a software engineer open at this slot machine game company I work on. And I was like, do you want to apply? And he was like, I can refer you or whatever. I'm like, sure. And I got it. And so it was like, I never like envisioned working on slot machine games, but like, yeah. But it's a lot of like, the people were really cool. The same skills apply, and like, if you ignore the moral quandaries of it, it was pretty fun. And until I had that nagging feeling about still wanting to be a technical artist. But yeah, I think that was pivotal for me, was just like making friends, being friendly, and or like, I don't know, just relying on your friends. Friends is the answer.
Networking is cool.
This is a bit more of a convoluted answer, because technically I haven't graduated and gotten a job yet. But basically, since I got to college, I have been endlessly flipping back and forth on whether or not I want to actually work in the games industry. And I figured out pretty quick, even at the end of high school, that I enjoy making games and that I probably will be making games for the foreseeable future. But I was, always kind of torn between, is it a hobby, is it a career? And admittedly, not all that's been self-dictated. The industry is pretty terrible right now.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
I'm sure we're going to get to that.
We will.
But to put it shortly, I actually ended up getting a front-end web dev internship off of the back of my gaming resume. So I got an internship with basically no experience in the field. And that kind of showed me that like my experience making games transfers to other stuff. Being an indie game dev makes you a really great sell as a full stack software engineer. Because ultimately it's, even if the literal technical skill sets aren't the same, it's Unity and C# and team delegation and integrating art and not JavaScript, SQL, or stuff like that. But it's still you still need the same kind of skills. And so I'm actually interning currently same place. It's a company called Message Eaters out in Midtown. And hoping, it sounds like they want me back, so fingers crossed. And then in terms of sticking with it, when Slider finished being a VGDev game, I decided that was going to be my hunker down project. Because the first part's always fun, right? When you're just making lots and lots of content and fixing really funny physics glitches and that sort of thing. But actually toning down and polishing a game for a full release on Steam is a much different beast. But I still enjoy it. Yes, it's a lot more grueling just sitting there and watching people playtest for hours and, tearing apart your design decisions that have been in place for a year, but you did playtesting and all of a sudden it doesn't work. But through that process, I've realized that I still enjoy this. And that I think for me personally, working a software engineering day job while doing indie dev on the side, at least for me, has been a lot better for my work-life balance. I get burned out, and even within indie dev, working on Arcane and Slider, it's nice to have two projects to kind of flip back and forth on. So, using my brain in different ways, and yes, I'm still programming, my job is programming, and I come home when I program for fun, but I do it in different ways. But I think each of them, even if I don't transfer the skills directly, kind of influences the other one in the way I approach problems and that sort of thing.
Yes, I have a question about in terms of networking and all that, but I think you guys have done a really good job of emphasizing about how important it is to make connections with people around you. Again, ATL game devs and all that stuff. But I know people here are interested specifically of if you are planning on going into the industry, whether it be solo dev or indie dev with a small team or possibly going AAA. Let's talk a bit about the state of the industry. It's not good right now, to be entirely frank. I think the last time I checked it, there's been more than 8,300 layoffs within the gaming industry just in the past 2 months alone. and that is nearing the maximum estimate last year of about 10,000. So there's just been a general downturn and things haven't been going well. So when it comes to looking at whether you want to go into the industry, how and where you are going to, what are some of the things and realities that someone should look at when making that decision? Because obviously it's not a permanent decision, as we've seen here. There's many different ways to get into the industry, both getting out of it from Chase's perspective of going from like hobbyist to working as a full stack developer, but there's also the other way around. But just some of your thoughts there.
So I can take point on this one because it's kind of, I've been kind of hit by that lately. So as someone who has been laid off, who has been part of the earlier wave of layoffs, it definitely was extremely demoralizing to kind of have that veil shattered, right? You're working this, what should be a dream job, and suddenly the curtain falls and suddenly you realize just how much you've sacrificed to get there, right? To give you some context, when I worked at PlayStation, PlayStation is based in Los Angeles, or San Diego, Los Angeles. I am not based in Los Angeles, San Diego. That is we are a full 3 hours behind schedule. So I would be waking up at around 10, getting into my shift at 11, and then maybe I was supposed to clock out at 7, but I was typically clocking out at like 9, maybe 10. And it was quite bad. And not to like freak you guys out, it is actually, it can be pretty bad, but it's not always that bad. It's just, as a project manager, you just have more responsibilities to deal with. However, I think the biggest lesson I got coming out of that is, and this is gonna sound very like harsh and callous, but be ruthless when it comes to defending your own interests when it comes to employment. Yes, working on game dev is a wonderful privilege to have. It's great to be in this industry. I'm happy that I can do this. I'm sure all of us can say the same. But at the end of the day, a job is a job. Unless, of course, you're a business owner yourself, like Kartik. Unless you're in his shoes, then your job stops when you get home. You leave your job with your coat, with your shoes at the door. Do not let that become personal, because the second it does start getting personal, that's when you need to start thinking about getting out. Because burnout, there's a reason our industry is so known for burnout. There's a reason you hear all the horror stories coming out, and yes, there's definitely a lot of stories that don't go reported. But all that to say, you can make your way through this so long as you guys are aware of what you guys are willing to sacrifice and what you guys aren't. And I know that's kind of like daunting to hear as like a student, because as a student, I remember when I was a student, I was looking at my resume and I was looking at the job qualifications, and I'd be thinking, wow, I'm not qualified for any of this. Ain't no way I'm getting a job. That's crazy. But in the end, there is a place that will take you. There is a job that you can land so long as you continue to push. And obviously don't stagnate, right? Like, keep working on games, keep doing your stuff in the background. But not having a job when you come out of college is totally normal. That is the norm, not the opposite. I know Georgia Tech likes to like enforce this idea that like, because you have this piece of paper that you spent 4 years paying for, you are now eligible for a job. Obviously, most of you probably know that that's not true in the first place. But especially for games, it's very likely that you might not have something going in, and that's totally okay. Just keep pushing and keep a list in your head about, or hell, even write it down, but like about what is important to you as something, like it can be as simple as, when do I clock out? When am I willing to clock out? Because I was clocking out at 8 o'clock. That is absolutely no time to do anything during the day. Or it could be like, do I get lunch break? It's as simple as that. Simple things like that are very important when it comes to talking to recruiters and negotiating for yourself. And even as a student, for like an internship, you can still negotiate. Do not be afraid. They're used to that.
Yeah, I can go. So I was not laid off, but I had, like, I guess, partners, or on NBA All World, we worked with Niantic on that game. So they provided the technology and the publishing, but we were like the primary developing studio on that game. And then we had like support people, or like people who were also working on the Niantic side. And last year, Niantic also did layoffs. They laid off that team I was working with. They canceled the game. And so all that work I did on that game is just gone into the ether, you know? So it's like, but to build off like defending your own and like your interests, you like, this is going to keep happening unless workers at big companies, even or small companies, doesn't matter, unionize. Like, shout out to Game Workers Unite, because that's how it's gonna happen. That's how it's gonna be fixed. Is if you get into the industry, push for it. Like, talk to your coworkers, because like once you have that majority, there's nothing they can do.
The people around you, this is your tribe.
Unions are
Protect
cool.
your tribe.
In a collective, talk about your pay.
Yeah, I'll say for when I graduated, I mentioned I went straight to Cartoon Network, but I actually did get a job offer from a AAA studio that will go unnamed. Not because I care about people finding out that I'm saying this about them, but it really applies to every AAA studio. The offer was like insulting, honestly. It was like, oh, so you want me to work on this game that, you know, it's only just been announced and I already know it's going to become like one of the best sellers when it comes out, and it did become a bestseller. It was one of the best-selling AAA games of that year, and they were offering me a role to be a gameplay programmer on it, and I was looking at the pay, and I was looking at where the studio was located. I was looking at the fact that they were asking me to relocate without any relocation assistance, and I was like, this is a joke, right? Like, I can't even live within a 3-mile radius. I can't even live within like a 10-mile radius of the studio, and work for this company. And the response that I got on that call was, a lot of people want to work here. And it's true. A lot of people did want to work there. And after, like, it was the most heart-wrenching thing for me to do to turn that down, because I was like, this is all I've ever wanted to do. I wanted to be a big gameplay designer, gameplay programmer at a cool AAA studio, to have that badge on my chest. And I was like, like you said, I knew my worth, and I was like, I'm not going to drop below that. And I think also, like Mitch said, like, we the people who are going to be working in the game industry, have to stand up for and say, yeah, this is a dream job, but I'm not willing to give up my personal comfort for it, because too many people have, and that has kind of led to the current situation, I think.
Do not let your passion be abused. Okay. And I think just finally, as like a final quick thing for everyone out in the audience, what is a piece of advice that you would give for getting into the industry, something that is actionable that someone can do right now?
Network. Every job I've had since college, I have had through the people I've known, not through tons of cold calling, not through tons of emails. That's the way a lot of people get jobs. I'm not saying that's like a bad way to do it, or that there's something wrong with that. I just mean that I've been fortunate enough to have a strong network that I've built up through meeting tons of developers at various conferences, at various events. Now I'm trying to give back to the community by organizing ATL Game Devs, which again, if anyone's interested in joining, everyone here should be 18.
You should join the Discord.
18 and up, you're welcome to join. I'm doing this because I recognize how much my career benefited from it, and I want to make sure everyone else gets the opportunity to meet local professionals, meet other people who are working in the industry, and more importantly, like, meet and get to know better your peers. Like, don't be so like cloying, like, oh, I can't wait to meet that really important person because they're going to get me a job. Really get to know your peers, really try to make some strong connections now, because eventually the people who are sitting next to you in all these classes are the ones who are going to be at the jobs, who are going to say, hey, I had this friend who was really cool, I know they were really trying to do this one thing, I think you should hire them, and that's where you're going to get a lot of your best career options. So network, make friends, get to know your peers, work together.
Double down on what he said. Networking is huge. Like I said, the people who you're with right now are potentially people you might be working with or sharing an office with in a couple years. To give you an anecdote, like I met Kartik when I was a freshman at GSU. I didn't even go to tech, and I remember I was helping you organize the workshop for Global Game Jam or something, and I thought that was it. I thought that was like, okay, he's graduated, he's gone now. I'll probably never see him again. Lo and behold, here we are. And this type of stuff happens pretty frequently. But what I really wanted to say, not that what Carter said isn't important, is that there's a lot of bad stuff happening in this industry. It's hard, it's tough, and it can be very daunting at times. But as you can see from everyone here, we have made a life out of it. We're happy doing this. We're working to make positive change, and I would say don't stop if you're worried about not being able to make the cut. You absolutely can. That is one thing I think the college experience is kind of known for. It's kind of killing that enthusiasm, that sense of inspiration of, yeah, I can do this if I try. Yeah, sure, sometimes it's going to be difficult, obviously, it's not easy, but so long as you're continuing to do this, eventually you will hit your mark. I think all of us can agree on that front. But yeah, as we're trying to warm up our close out, I do want to say, I don't know if you guys are open, but I am probably going to be hanging around like after this panel. If you guys want to like chat or just hang out afterwards, ask questions that you didn't get to ask. I know we didn't get a Q&A, so we'll be doing that afterwards. Yeah. And Mitch, do you have any?
Yeah, so on top of like your peers, local communities, I'd also recommend if you're interested in a certain type of role or you see yourself doing something, like seek out the people online, whether that's like forums or discords or like anything you can find, like an IRC channel, like they exist, and if not, create one. Like I think that's helped me a lot in my career, like building my portfolio for technical art and that kind of thing, was joining communities, participating in like art competitions, challenges, that kind of thing, to like, and then like talking with other people, like writing breakdown articles about it. Like I got a lot of like feedback, engagement, and like building online friendships that way, just like, and then I think that really helped like me eventually get the role that I have right now.
This is gonna sound really lame as like the closing part of this panel. My advice is make games. Like seriously, just go make games. Your first game is going to suck. Your second game is going to suck. Maybe by the time you hit game 10, it will be less sucky. But like you need to get all of that out of your system. If you start by trying to make your dream project, you're going to like waste 2 years of your life and have nothing to show for it. So start small. Yes, does making Rollerball suck? Does making Space Invaders suck? Yes, but guess what? That's what you have to do first. And so if it all seems overwhelming, and trust me, I've been there, I know it does, just start with that. And even if it feels dumb and stupid and like you're wasting your time, I promise you, building up that foundation is going to get you somewhere. Make games and make them fast. You know, don't spend more than 2 weeks on the first game and then show it off to your friends and then move on with your life and then do that again and again and again. And eventually, as you build up your repertoire and build up your skill set, you can focus on those longer projects. You know, lead a VGDev game for a semester, that sort of thing. But like, if you go in trying to do everything at once, you're going to burn yourself out and you're going to fail and you're going to think, oh my gosh, I hate this, I can never do this, and walk away from indie dev forever. No, you can do it, but you just have to take that gentle approach, and you know, eventually you might end up with something really cool.
Well, thank you guys so much for talking and giving some of your thoughts. Thank you guys for sitting here and listening to us talk. That has been us. And just real quick, go down the line, say your names again, plug.
Kartik, Finite Reflection Studios, ATL Game Devs. I'll hang out afterwards when wants to talk.
Yeah, we'll hang out afterwards. I'm Yoon, Lacuna Dev, Project Meadow.
I've been Mitch. I'll just plug what they're plugging too.
And I've been Chase, president of VGDev. Go play Arcane and Slider. Go to the VGDev arcade upstairs and play our awesome games from
It's
the past 2
awesome.
semesters. We have like $800 worth of free stuff for y'all to win.
Please go play. It's awesome. And I've been
All right.
Jade, your
Have
fun
a good
friendship
WreckCon,
minister.
everybody.